deep divers. Ready to dive into something really different in gaming today.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a pretty wild concept. We're talking about a game focused entirely on player versus player combat.
A game where gear and strategy are everything.
Exactly. Like, imagine a game where instead of spending hours questing or grinding for levels, you're laser focused on building the ultimate warrior.
Yeah, you're basically spending your time theory crafting perfect builds and strategizing like you're leading an army.
That sounds intense. So much prep work.
Well, yeah, it completely changes how we think about time spent in a game.
Right, so instead of like those marathon gaming sessions, you'd have these intense bursts of
Strategy and action.
Okay, so walk me through this. How much time are we actually talking about here?
Well, some estimates suggest players could spend a crazy 50 to 70% of their time on these out-of-match activities.
Whoa, like more than half the game is spent getting ready to fight.
Yeah, think about it. Researching gear, testing different combinations, and constantly adapting to the shifting meta of the game.
So it's like a constant arms race.
Totally. It's almost like a fantasy sports draft, but for virtual weapons and armor.
I can see how that would appeal to some players. The strategic depth is insane.
Absolutely. Then you have that remaining 30 to 50% dedicated to the actual PvP matches.
Okay, so those matches must be incredibly intense.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about putting those carefully crafted strategies to the test, facing off against other players who are just as prepared.
I can only imagine the adrenaline rush.
It's like a high-stakes duel where every decision, every piece of gear can mean the difference between victory and defeat.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture here.
Yeah.
But the thing is, whenever you have a game that revolves so heavily around gear, it makes me wonder about balance.
Right.
Like, how do you make sure it doesn't just become a game of whoever has the best stuff wins?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? You don't want it to become a gear check simulator.
Exactly. We've all been in that situation where you feel like you lost before the match even started because your opponent just had way bigger gear.
It's super frustrating. So how do you avoid that?
Yeah, how do you design a game to make sure that gear matters but skill still reigns supreme?
The key, I think, is finding that sweet spot where gear provides strategic advantages and meaningful choices.
Okay.
But it doesn't completely overshadow individual player skill.
Can you give me some examples? Like, how have other games tried to tackle this?
Sure. Think about the difference between something like arena PvP in a massive online game like, say, World of Warcraft,
Okay.
versus a PvP shooter with loadouts. Like something like Destiny 2.
Okay. Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
In WoW, gear can be massively influential. Sometimes it feels like it dictates the outcome of the fight before you even start.
Yeah, you can get totally steamrolled if your gear isn't up to par.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in a game like Destiny, your loadout matters, don't get me wrong. It can give you an edge in certain situations.
Yeah.
But it's your skill with those weapons, your movement, your game sense that ultimately determines whether you win or lose.
Right, so it's not just about the stats on the gear, it's about how you use it.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, where can we actually see this hypothetical concept playing out in a real-world setting? Is there anything out there that's actually trying to do this?
Well, there's this fascinating mod for the game, Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, that I think we should talk about.
Okay.
It's called the Ape Society Amphitheatre.
Ooh, that sounds cool. Tell me more about it.
Well, it's using some pretty cutting-edge technology to manage the ownership of unique in-game items like NFTs.
NFTs. Hold up, let's back up for a second.
Sure.
I know a lot of our listeners have probably heard about NFTs, but maybe not everyone fully understands how they work.
Yeah, it can get a bit technical.
So can you break it down for us? What does it actually mean for a game item to be an NFT?
Basically, imagine every piece of gear, every weapon, every piece of armor has its own unique digital certificate of authenticity.
So it's like a fingerprint that proves it's the only one of its kind in existence.
Exactly. And this fingerprint lives on something called the blockchain.
Okay, so what does that actually mean for the gameplay? What makes it different from just having a regular in-game item?
Well, a couple things. First, it makes these items incredibly valuable, not just because of their stats, but because they're genuinely rare and unique.
Yeah, you can't just duplicate them or find a bunch of them lying around.
Exactly. And second, it opens up all sorts of possibilities for player ownership and control. You truly own these items, not just in the game, but as verifiable digital assets.
Okay, now that's interesting. So it's not just about the stats, it's about the bragging rights of owning something truly rare and special.
Absolutely. But there's even more to it than that. The Ape Society Amphitheatre also uses something called SFTs and RFTs to further manage the rarity and permissions associated with different items.
Okay, now you're really losing me. SFTs. RFT?
I know, it's a lot of jargon.
Yeah, break it down for us non-blockchain experts.
Think of it like this. You could have a legendary sword that, because of these SFTs and RFTs, only you have permission to use. It makes it truly one of a kind and incredibly valuable.
Whoa, that's wild.
Right. Or imagine a shield that only a handful of players can acquire because of its limited edition status, controlled by these tokens.
So it adds another layer of scarcity and prestige to the game.
Exactly. And because everything is tracked on the blockchain, it creates this transparent and secure market where players can trade these items with confidence.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me. So you have this whole player-driven economy springing up around these items.
Yeah, it's like a stock market for rare and powerful gear.
I love that. And it's all made possible by this blockchain technology.
Right, it creates this trust and transparency that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
So it's not just a gimmick, it's actually changing how the game works on a fundamental level.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm officially hooked. I want to dive deeper into this Ape Society Amphitheatre and see how it all works in practice.
Let's do it. I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible here.
Yeah, this is fascinating. We've gone from imagining a hypothetical game to looking at a real-world mod that's actually doing some of these things.
It's a glimpse into the future of gaming.
And potentially the future of digital ownership as well.
Absolutely. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's explore how the mod actually plays out. What are the matches like? What kind of strategies emerge? And what lessons does it hold for the future of gaming?
Let's find out.
So we're stepping into this Ape Society Amphitheatre, right?
Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this thing actually work?
Well, imagine the base game, Mount and Blade 2.
Big battles, tons of chaos.
Right. But here it's stripped down.
Okay.
It's you, your opponent, and the crowd.
So it's like a one-on-one duel.
Exactly, like gladiators in an arena.
That sounds intense.
It really is.
Okay.
And with this NFT system, it just takes it to another level.
Okay, how so?
So remember how each piece of gear is tied to an NFT?
Yeah, like that digital fingerprint we were talking about.
Exactly. And those fingerprints are on the blockchain, which means...
It's all secure and verifiable.
Right. Every weapon, every piece of armor is one of a kind. You can't duplicate it, can't fake it.
And that makes those items incredibly valuable.
Oh, absolutely. Not just for their stats, but for their rarity and prestige.
You're wielding a sword that literally nobody else in the world has.
Exactly. And then you've got the SFTs and RFTs on top of that.
Ugh, those things again.
I know.
But just remind me, what do they do again?
So basically, they control how rare certain items are.
Okay.
And who has permission to use them.
So you could have like a super rare legendary sword.
Right.
That only you can use because of these SFTs and RFTs.
Exactly. It's like having the ultimate bragging rights in the game.
I can see why people would go crazy for that.
Oh, yeah. And because it's all tracked on the blockchain.
The market for these items must be insane.
Totally. It's like a digital arms race. Players are constantly buying, selling, trading these items, trying to find that one piece that will give them an edge.
So it's not just about fighting. It's about building the perfect arsenal.
Exactly. It adds this whole other layer of depth to the game.
Okay, but at the end of the day, you still got to fight, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So paint me a picture. What's an actual match like in this Ape Society Amphitheatre?
All right, so picture this. You and your opponent standing in the center of this arena.
Okay, the crowd is going wild.
Exactly. You're circling each other, weapons drawn, sizing each other up.
Trying to figure out what gear they have.
Right, what their strategy might be. And then, bam, the clash begins.
Swords are swinging, sparks are flying.
It's intense. Every move matters. Every decision could be your last.
It sounds brutal. But how do they make sure it's not just about who has the best gear?
Well, that's the beauty of it. They've managed to find this balance where gear matters.
Right.
But it doesn't completely dominate the game.
So you can still be outmatched gear-wise.
Yes.
But if you're skilled enough, you can still win.
Absolutely.
That's reassuring. Otherwise, it wouldn't be much of a challenge.
Right. And it's what makes those underdog victories so satisfying. When you manage to outplay someone who's decked out in top-tier gear.
Yeah, like David versus Goliath, but in a virtual arena.
Exactly. And it just goes to show that the mod isn't just about creating this complex gear system. It's about finding ways to enhance the core gameplay experience, to make those duels even more exciting, even more strategic.
and to give players more agency in how they approach those duels.
Exactly. Whether you prefer to go in with brute force and the best gear money can buy, or if you're more of a tactical player who relies on skill and outsmarting your opponent.
It's all viable in this mod.
Right, and that's what makes it so compelling.
You know, it's funny, we started this deep dive talking about a hypothetical game.
Yeah.
And we ended up talking about a real mod that's already doing some of these things.
I know it's wild, right? The Ape Society Amphitheatre is like a glimpse into the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with all this blockchain talk,
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that at its core, this is still a game.
Right.
And games are supposed to be fun.
Absolutely.
So the big question is the Ape Society Amphitheatre actually enjoyable to play?
Well, from what we're seeing, the answer is a resounding yes.
Really?
Yeah, players are loving it.
That's awesome.
They're raving about the intensity of the combat,
Okay.
the depth of the gear system, the thrill of owning those unique items.
So it's not just a proof of concept or a tech demo. It's actually a fun game.
Exactly, and that's what's so exciting about it.
It's not sacrificing gameplay for the sake of innovation.
Right.
It's actually enhancing the experience.
It proves that you can have both cutting-edge technology and a compelling gameplay loop.
And the Ape Society Amphitheatre is a perfect example of that.
Absolutely. It's using blockchain in a way that actually makes the game more engaging, more transparent, and honestly more fun.
So to circle back to that question we started with, can a game where you spend more time preparing than actually playing be truly captivating?
Well, I think the Ape Society Amphitheatre has proven that it can.
It's not just about the time spent in the arena.
Right.
It's about the whole journey.
The strategizing, the theory crafting, the building of your ultimate warrior.
And the satisfaction of finally putting all that effort to the test against another player.
It's a different kind of gaming experience.
But it's definitely one that has the potential to be incredibly rewarding.
For sure. And it makes you wonder, what other possibilities are out there?
What other ways can we use technology to push the boundaries of gaming?
What will the future of gaming look like?
Those are questions for another deep dive, I think.
Definitely. We've only just scratched the surface.
Well, deep divers, I hope you enjoyed this exploration into the world of gear-focused PvP and the Ape Society Amphitheatre.
It's been a wild ride.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on this concept.
Do you think this is the future of gaming?
Or just a passing trend.
Let us know in the comments.
And as always, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.
Happy gaming.